Well, Kelly, it's that time again. We're going to revisit Rolling Stone's idea of the 50 worst album covers. Now we're in the top 25 or bottom 25 of the worst, best.
Yes.
I'm not sure what you would call this, but this is the other 25. The 25 absolute worst or the 50 worst, according to Rolling Stone. I have a feeling we're going to see, and when I say I have a feeling, I mean I already read the list. So I have a feeling we're going to see some repeat complaints from both of us on here. But I am curious to see what you think of a few of these, and I have a few comments about a couple of the bands as I am wont to do.
Yep. Yeah, I I got a lot of disagreement on there's ones on this next section. I'm kind of like, it's not great, but I don't know if I put it in the worst. I thought the first 25 we went through were actually a little more harrowing than I mean, there's some magic in this list too, but we'll see how it goes. But I know Mike's a huge fan. We'll start off with 25. Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. Uh, Shockingly, the band came up with an idea of having a girl in a t-shirt with this title on it. Um, Not surprising. Apparently, the record label didn't like it. Um, it's bad. I don't. It's not a cover I'd ever want. You can barely read it. Um, their font choice for their name's kind of nice. But it's just that one's just kind of bad for me. I mean, it's just a bit boring too. Your thoughts?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the reason the girl one was rejected, they had chosen the photo and everything to use, and then when the record label put it together, they laid it out differently, and it had like a pink background or something. And Bon Jovi, already not being known as the hardest rock band of the time, wasn't going to put out a Pink album. If I remember correctly, that's kind of how that went down. So I don't like Bon Jovi as a band. Um,
I'm with you.
don't like any of their songs. Don't like any of their music videos. Um, John Bon Jovi, the singer, did a solo movie slash album. I don't know if you've seen that or remember that.
No.
It was like an hour long movie that he made and the accompanying album for it. So it's like an hour long music video that incorporates this album with a narrative story. Demi Moore is in it along with him, starring in it. It actually wasn't that bad. And the closest things to songs I like featuring his vocals are on that album. And most Bon Jovi fans absolutely hate that. So I feel like that is a great microcosm of where I stand with Bon Jovi. That the most tolerable I found him is when his fans absolutely hate it. So this album sucks. The album cover sucks. It's they wrote "Slippery When Wet" on a wet trash bag and took a picture of it because it was too late to do another album cover or to relay out the album. Yeah, it sucks. It reminds me actually a lot of Metallica's self-titled album and just the kind of dumb simplicity of it. Also, too, this is Bon Jovi's biggest album, so maybe there's something to that.
Yeah. I guess. Um, all right. With echoes of the Sledgehammer video, we get Billy Squire's Signs of Life. Um, Another, so this is, I mean, and we're talking about the album covers, not the artist, but it's artist number two that I'm not a big fan of. So, uh, but this one's bad. I'd say kind of high school assignment to do a collage, and there you go. You done. So that's about where I put this one.
Yeah, I don't really like any of these collage style album covers so far. Um, Obviously, I just don't think that's a good way to go with your album cover, or maybe it's these executions because, like Kelly said, this is very, I when I was in high school and we had art classes and things like that, this is the kind of stuff that would happen sometimes. So that's what it looks like to me. Also, I'm not a big Billy Squire fan either. I only know a couple of his hits. So
Yep, and apparently his Rock Me Tonight video in the description talks about it's pretty cringeworthy as well. So maybe at some point we'll do the top 25 worst videos. But
that's actually my biggest touch point with Billy Squire is the Rock Me Tonight video. Have you seen it?
no. I'm sure
Um,
no, I'm sure I have, but I blocked it out.
it's him dancing around what's supposed to be, I guess, his bedroom, singing his own song.
No, like he
And
did.
yeah, it's he attributes it to like being extremely detrimental to his own career doing that video. I remember the video just being a big laughing stock whenever it was brought up or whenever the VJs on MTV Kids used to be something where you would watch music videos. And then there would be like DJs, but video DJs that they called VJs who would throw in little comments and stuff in between. And that video was basically only shown to mock it. So that's what I know of Billy Squire, that and his couple other songs. But with that image, I mean, he's not wrong. Like I had no interest in pursuing anything else. If the next Billy Squire song I heard was amazing, I still probably wouldn't listen to Billy Squire. That video was so bad.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, now that you kind of stepped me through it, like I said, I vaguely remember it, but not a fan. We'll go ahead and move on to number 23. Surprise, this album's not called Son of Raise Your Fist and Yell. It feels as if it's in that family. Um, Anthrax Fistful of Metal. Um, the typography is great. I think it's a good logo. That's good kind of clever logo there, and that's where it stops. Everything else is pretty horrific.
Yep, I agree. Uh, so I'm not the biggest Anthrax fan in the world. I do like them though, and they actually have one of my all-time favorite album covers, and I think one of the greatest album covers ever made. And it's not this one. Spoiler alert. If we're
I hope not.
if we're ever doing a this is one of those situations where like obviously they just didn't have money or whatever, and it's somebody's friend, I'm sure, who did this. He was like, my friend can draw, and this is what you get. Yeah, I mean it's poorly done. The proportions are awful. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm I've seen a lot of album covers like this, but most of those bands didn't go on to become as big as Anthrax. This was Anthrax's first album. So it is a little bit surprising that this was the jumping off point for a multi-platinum band.
Yeah. Yep. And I get too much Rage of Fist and Yell vibes from it.
Yeah, it is very, and just if anybody's interested, it's Among the Living, their
Oh, is
album that
the
I
is the
I I think one of the best. No, no, they have another album called Among the Living that I think is one of the best album covers of all time.
okay. Yeah, was I'll try as we make some comments through here when we make some references to other stuff. I did that in the last video. I'll try and throw some of that artwork up. So Raise Your Fist and Yell will be making a new appearance in this video as well. Uh, but this will be the only time on Bug Panda you see this image, will be my guess.
Yeah.
Again, someone I'm not a fan of. I'll let you start on this one. Your assessment of Endless Flight.
So to the best of my knowledge, I've never heard anything from Leo Sayer, whose album this is. It's not ringing any bells for me.
So if you remember a song that had a really high falsetto of "You've Got a Cute Way of Walking," does that at least? I'm not going to sing it. You're welcome,
Yeah.
viewer.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with this artist. So this is one of those situations where maybe this makes sense, but it's called Endless Flight, and I guess it's supposed to be him flying through the air, but it looks, because the perspective is off, more like he's falling towards you. And maybe again, maybe that makes sense. in the context of the album, but it's not good. Um, his outfit's not good. The colors aren't good. The way the logo is with the line drawn across the top there, it looks more like there's some sort of like a pull tab across the top of it rather than a design aesthetic choice. I just don't like any of this album cover.
Yeah, I would say this flight is ending, based on this photo. This is not an endless flight. This is maybe endless fall, but that's about it. He doesn't this is not a flight position. This is not how if one was flying and particularly flying endlessly. I do not believe they would adopt this stance. Is my
Yeah, and I do have to say, as somebody who was born a little bit after this album came out, I do appreciate that at some point people got together collectively as humanity and decided we should never do t-shirts and suspenders again. Because this isn't the only album I've seen with it. I've seen it in videos, I've seen it in movies and things like that. I'm not sure when that happened, but it is amazing that we got together as a country, especially in these divided times. I think it's important to remember that we can come together like this to end blight on society like that.
yeah. On the important stuff, I think we can get it right, like this. All right. Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, who apparently didn't like each other at this period of time on this album, or maybe ever, but definitely on this album. If you're not wearing suspenders and a t-shirt, you're got to be unbuttoning that shirt, show your manliness, and that's what we got going here. I It seems like a cropping error. I know there's like rule of
Yeah,
thirds, and there's things you could do. It's like another member of the band was going to join them and was late. I don't know, but so that just distracted me from the beginning. Was just like I said, I get the idea of you don't have to have everything dead center. This seems wrong. And then of course the stances are ridiculous. But um, your thoughts?
years ago, Black Sabbath had reunited with its original lineup after Dio died. Ozzy came back along with the original drummer, Bill Ward. Bill Ward very quickly dropped out of the reunion. So they had redone the website to feature a bunch of older photos of them from their early days as a band, and then quickly went out because Bill Ward didn't want them to use his image, had to Photoshop him out of these band photos, and they look like this because of it. Because there was clearly meant to be four guys, and now there's only three in the pictures. I know that isn't the case here, but that is what this looks like. The font is illegible the way that it's on there, so that's just another poor design choice strike against this. But my bigger problem with this is this exposed something to me, and it made me realize that I've been living with something that is a lie for a huge portion of my life. And that's the 80s hair band Tangier. Uh Super important band to me only because I know them. Um so they're from this area, and my dad's second wife, her brother was best friends with the singer of Tangier. So spent a weird amount of time with an 80s hair band. And his thing, not when I knew him as an older gentleman, but his thing in the 80s with Tangier was he would tuck his button-up shirt in and then unbutton it while it was tucked in. And that was for me and my friends just such an amazing thing to see. Like it's maybe the best fashion choice of the 80s that I'd ever seen. Like for all the big hair, for all the ridiculous outfits, there was something about watching these videos and looking at photos of him with his button-up shirt tucked in and then unbuttoned. We actually in early band practices for some of our early tours, when somebody would get mad at somebody else because it's a tense situation and you're trying to do a million things, we would always lighten the mood by somebody tucking their shirt in and then unbuttoning it. Just being like, "Don't make me do it. This is what metal is," and tucking the shirt in and unbuttoning it. So for all of these years, for I thought he created that. I had never seen any image older than the Tangier photos and album cover and video that had anybody else do that. And here it is, red guy in the middle. I don't know which member is which because I'm not a big Emerson Lake and Palmer guy, but red guy in the middle. God damn it if his shirt's not tucked in and unbuttoned.
Yeah. I hope they, respected the audience enough to be in order. Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. So I'm going,
Yeah,
he's Lake.
I'm going to be honest with you. Probably not, given how all the other design choices on this.
That's true.
Also, just, weird side. Stranded from Tangier is probably the best 80s hair metal album. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Slightly biased, but best 80s hair metal album if you're looking for that kind of stuff.
Maybe this cover could be saved by dropping Leo Sayer in the open spot. Improve the balance, would add another fashion dynamic to it. I don't know. It's a thought. All right. Ugh. Okay. Van Halen. Balance. I don't have much to say outside of yuck. I just I'm not a I'm not a fan of this on any level. I'll let you give a more professional critique.
So, I mean, we already talked, like, for whatever reason in the 90s, you had to put a baby on your album cover. I mean, there's literally like this is the thing of 90s albums, and there's more of them on this list too. This was just a thing that every band had to do at some point. I think it was in their contracts at major labels. Um, I would so the only I think it's stupid, and I only more recently actually kind of got into Van Halen. I never really liked them because I only knew the radio songs, and that was not for me. Um, some friends from other bands introduced me to some other deeper cut Van Halen stuff that I did really enjoy, but I've just never really been a fan. I've never thought any of their artwork or image is all that intriguing. What's weird though, apparently, I did not know this at the time, but it wasn't until much later that most people saw that it's supposed to be conjoined twins, are spelling out VH with their bodies. I always saw that. So I'm, this is going to sound weird. I was super proud of myself when I found out that most people didn't see that until later. Because if you remember in the 90s, the big thing in malls were those magic eye pictures
Mm-hmm.
where you had to like stare at it and see the image and stuff. Never once in my entire life did I ever see one of those images. It is just stupid dots on the thing. There is no image in there as far as I'm concerned. Never ever saw it. So the fact that this was the one thing that I saw that apparently a lot of people didn't, I was super excited about that. That being said, never been a big fan of theirs. This is with Sammy Hagar. I'm even less of a fan of that, which is weird because I think Sammy Hagar as a solo artist is good, and I've just never gotten into any of his stuff with Van Halen. And he's also a big part of one of our favorite Alice Cooper records, the Fistful of Alice live album. He plays on multiple songs on there because it was recorded at his club that he owns. So I like Sammy Hagar, just not with Van Halen. And this is a terrible album cover that continues the super bizarre trend of putting babies on your album covers in the 90s.
Yeah. This one clearly belongs on the list. So good job, Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
I will support your
But I,
decision.
I'm just proud that I always saw the VH.
That I didn't. So good job. Be proud. Speaking of babies, here we go.
Yep.
Chumbawamba, tub thumper. Um, it's like everybody says every baby's beautiful. Not this one. Not this one at all. Um, I don't know if this is a bad album cover. It's a disquieting album cover. It's an unpleasant album cover. Um, it kind of makes a statement. I mean, I do think kind of the graphical treatment's kind of cool. If they had maybe just done something a little different with the image tucked away in that corner, I'd probably be happier with them. Um, but uh, the logo work is kind of nice. It doesn't look like a pull off tab like the earlier one, but I can live with that. But I really can't stomach the young child at the bottom. Sorry, Junior. Your thoughts?
So this is the album cover that I have the most to say about. So what's your familiarity with Chumbawamba, particularly before this came out?
Uh, it begins and ends with Tub Thumper and almost a deeper cut because it's the They Might Be Giants per, the version that I'm which I guess I enjoyed in contrast to. I mean, I like this one too, but so zero knowledge, and I said Tub
Good,
Thumper is it.
good. So I hate to sound like a hipster, and it's going to sound to a lot of people like there's no way, but I knew who Chumbawamba was many, many years before this happened, before they became popular briefly. When I was a kid, I got really into punk rock, which sent me down a rabbit hole of tiny indie punk bands, particularly the more DIY, the better. Which, if you ever go down that rabbit hole prior to this, will quickly lead you to Chumbawamba. They had been around since the early 80s. They were a folk punk band who was so political that even in the deep punk hole that I was in, I couldn't bear to listen. It was just it was just so over the top with the political stuff that it didn't even feel like listening to music. It felt like listening to somebody bark their politics at you, which is ironic because that's what the title is referring to in this. My biggest takeaway of Chumbawamba prior to this was another album cover of theirs with a baby on it. This is their second album with a baby on the cover because you had to do that. Um, First, I would say that if you had told me until the day this song hit the radio that Chumbawamba was going to have a hit song on the radio, I would have said you're a liar. They were the weirdest, most underground DIY band with songs like one of their songs is actually called Mouthful of Shit. That was one of their more popular songs. There was there was no way that this was going to happen. But apparently while they were making this album, they made a conscious decision to make a more commercially accessible album. They wanted more people to hear their music. So they scaled back. It's not gone. If you listen to the album, there's a lot of political stuff on there, but it is scaled back tremendously compared to what it was. It is kind of general fight the man references here and there, as opposed to really specific political party chanting and things like that that was on previous releases. Um, this was a huge they basically it's a good thing this worked for them because they basically lost their entire existing fan base over this. They were actually thrown off of their record label when they were working on this album because the indie label they were on called themselves and threw them off of the record label when they heard that they were making a less political, more pop oriented record. They refused, they told them they were not going to release it and ended up parting ways with them. And they lost most of their fan base. And there was even a compilation of punk rock bands who all did diss songs about John over this record. That's how bad the backlash in the punk scene was against this band for doing this because and they were very open that they intentionally made a way more accessible album. So take that as you will. Um, the important thing to note about this album though is this is their second baby album cover. The first one which and this album cover is meant to be a sequel to the first one, and that's why you need to know this. I'm not sure if you can show this one. It's from their album Anarchy, and it is a picture of a baby crowning on the cover. For anybody who doesn't know what that means, it's when they pull the baby out of the mother's vagina. That's what's
Yeah.
on the cover of the album. This is actually meant to be the sequel album cover to that, where the baby is now born, and that's that's what he looks like, I guess. So when I went into a mainstream record store and saw this sitting there, having listened to Anarchy and knowing what was on the cover and everything, I was shocked by this. Way more shocked when I heard it on the radio. The radio version of Tub Thumper, if anybody hasn't heard the album, is very different than the album version. It's missing like a minute and a half of the song in the beginning. And there is plenty of political stuff on here, but compared to the weird folk punk, super political stuff from before, this might as well be in sync, this album. So super weird. That's why I had a lot to say about it. Also, again, the baby thing, although I understand this is referencing the last time they had a baby on the album cover.
He made it out. Yeah, we won't
Yeah.
be including we won't be including anything on that.
That album is on streaming services, but they can't put the cover on there. So I believe it's like a picture of a flower or something that's on the cover on streaming services.
So Scorpions Love Drive. I remember seeing this album. uh,
Was that it? Was that all your
yeah.
I've seen this before.
I've seen this before. I remembered it. So I'll give you memorable. So um uh she's a cool customer. you know, I'd probably be a little more emotive in this situation than she is, but that's me. Um yeah, not a just not a bad, just not a good idea for a cover. I don't think. So I guess it's a 13-year-old boy might design this cover, but that's about it. Um, do you remember this album cover?
Yep. Yeah. So I I never really liked Scorpions. Not that I've heard a lot of their stuff, but I remember seeing their album covers before I ever consciously heard a single Scorpion song. And I don't think any of them are good. And they're all like I didn't at the time as a kid didn't understand the idea of trying to be controversial to get attention, but I knew that that's what this was somehow just inherently. like like they're just trying to get your attention. It's not even good. It's just trying to be shocking. I believe it mentions it in the thing here, but their most infamous one is an album called Virgin Killer, which had a naked like 12 or 13-year-old or something on the cover. Again, it's edge lord trolling before that was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't be including that album cover either.
No.
so, so yeah, yeah, it's not a keeper. Um, okay. Oh, you can't tuck your shirt in and unbutton it. You just take it off. Um, uh, this is not a good looking group of gen. I know I get in trouble with you. you. You always say I'm body shaming people. I think these are largely misshapen humans. And if you should have the good judgment to say, I'm a I look very different from many people. I'm going to cover parts of me up. Uh, so I just think it's a strange looking group of guys, and they should have kept their shirts on. And I don't really like the guy pointing at the nipple either. Not a fan of that little move. Um, I can't decide of the lineup who disturbs me the most because I originally thought it's the guy with the chin on the shoulder. So I think it was him. And then I said, no, 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 it's the guy on the far right. And then I go, no, I think it's the guy on the left. He's the quiet axe murderer. I don't know. They're all axe murderers in my book. Um, so why don't you give your much more mature intellectual response to this cover?
So if you guys remember in the first half of our video on this, Orleans was a part of my first Not Ninja Turtles concert that I ever went to. Um, I mentioned it with REO Speedwagon. REO Speedwagon and Fleetwood Mac were the headliners. Then Orleans and Pat Benatar were the openers for it. Orleans went on first. There might have been a local opener too, but Orleans was first on the bill. I was the least impressed by them. Never really went back and listened to any of their other stuff. I did go and listen to like Pat Benatar and Fleetwood Mac and stuff like that afterwards to kind of get a better sense of their music. Obviously, as a young child, I didn't choose to go to that concert. I was taken to that concert. I didn't know who these bands were. Um, so I and New and Orleans, I had no like I had heard obviously like I knew Fleetwood Mac from the radio. I'd heard of REO Speedwagon and I was vaguely familiar with some Pat Benatar stuff. Orleans I'd never heard of before. I do remember there were some people there who were there to see them though. And then I remember sometime after that concert seeing this album cover and just being like, why are they naked? And I remember being in a record store and pointing it out to my dad, and he's like, they're not naked, they have their shirts off. And I was like, I'm pretty sure they're naked. Like that's how like they're really close in this picture. And you know what? That's a beautiful thing for them. Like Kelly said, maybe they're not the best looking guys in the world, but you see the one guy on the end is, holding the other guy's hand on his chest. On the other side, you got a guy flicking a dude's nipple, and the guy in the middle is the creepiest because he
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I originally thought it was just the cool guy looking down, but now I realize the sight line. Yeah, and I
yeah.
go, okay, that's a problem for
Yeah,
me.
and it's all really weird. I can't imagine, and this isn't like I have no problem with homoerotic album covers. There should be more. I just can't imagine what they intended by this, if that makes sense. Like,
Yep.
there's a couple that we're going to get to near the top of the list that aren't good, but like, I get what it's supposed to be. I don't understand what this is supposed to be because, to the best of my knowledge, there's no like homoerotic imagery related to Orleans. And they were like of a bill that included REO Speedwagon and Fleetwood Mac, not exactly, hard party metal bands or anything like that, seemed the most buttoned up at that show. And it stood out because the other people, had a beer on stage, maybe dropped an F-bomb here or there. There was none of that from Orleans. I'm pretty sure they were sitting down when they played. I think they had stools. So I mean it just I don't know what this is supposed to be. And I don't think I want to delve into it
No,
to
and I'm
find
assuming
out.
they were wearing shirts when you saw them.
Yeah, they were fully clothed.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have
I was
explained some things, but okay,
yeah.
that makes some sense. All
But yeah,
right.
this is I don't understand what this is meant to be.
Okay. Bob Dylan saved. This is in Bob's Christian phase. Born again. Um, Pretty standard born again album cover. I'd say that would work. This is another one that, I don't know if they mixed up the the album with the album cover in terms of when they're saying, because Save's not exactly Dylan's greatest work. Um, Derivative a little bit. But I'm just, and that's another one that I'm just kind of like, it's for me, it's not great. It doesn't really interest me a ton, but it doesn't also um strike me the same way as the Orleans gentleman did. So So I'm not sure I had this one on the list. I don't think it's great, but I'm and the colors in particular are not ideal, I think, for this. But again, it's just like pretty forgettable for me.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Dylan fan. I saw Dylan live though. It was good live. Um, I don't like this album cover. It's basically the raise your fist and yell hand upside down without the face. And yeah, the colors are really bad. It looks muddy,
Yeah.
and the name and the album title are kind of washed out with the muddy background. It's poorly done and poorly designed. Maybe this, like Kelly was saying, if this was, religious thing, maybe this fits with the theme of the album. I'm not that much of a fan where I'm familiar with his individual albums, but I don't like this.
Yeah, I mean, you get kind of the Sistine Chapel God and Adam finger touch thing going, but it was done better in the Sistine Chapel. We'll go leave it at that. Here's who should have been on the Sistine Chapel. And I one day do want to live in Cucumber Castle because that is so just the title alone uh, puts this album in contention, be on a bad list. Cucumber Castle's not a go for me. Um, I think this is I think the thing that bugs me the most on this one is the drastically different directions they're looking. And looks like they're kind of armored up to take care of business. But either they're surrounded and they're kind of going through, or they're the most coolest knights ever. But there's not much I like about it. And this, you know, going back to the Emerson, Lake and Palmer, it's like, did somebody miss the photo shoot? Nope. This was a brief period of time when Robin Gibb had actually left the Bee Gees. Had one more left, I guess it'd be the BG, but um, uh, he came back, of course, but he took a break for a while. So uh, not impressed. Don't like their sight lines. I don't know why one guys managed to not score a glove. It seems like they're mismatched in their armor, but so not a lot going on here for me on this one.
So I only like one Bee Gees song. So hey, it's as far as I know, it's not on here. So it's I Started a Joke is the only song that I like. And so I don't know if this makes sense in the context of Cucumber Castle as an album, as far as them being like knights. I'm not sure how that pertains to it, but like Kelly said, this doesn't feel like it should have been the album cover. This feels like a random behind the scenes shot from the photo shoot for the album cover.
Yeah.
They're looking in different directions. It doesn't seem like they're actually posed. And then the way the title and the band name is layered on there, it's not good. It
No,
just seems like it was slapped on as an afterthought. There's no real sense to how it is because Bee Gees, the band name is in the top right corner, and then the album title's not at the bottom or in the center where you'd expect. It's kind of off center a little bit in the middle. This just feels like some weird leftover photo from a photo shoot that was probably better.
yeah, it could have been the back cover. That could have worked there and had the list of songs running on there. But yeah, I'm with you. I totally agree. Another one I remember. Yes, the Going for One, which actually is a trifold cover. So there's more skyscrapers to be had. You'd open this whole thing up. Um, I believe there's some intellectual thinking around what the lines mean. Um, don't know what that would be. Um, this I'm glad he's facing away. I guess. I uh, I I don't know. I guess I'm kind of, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think the idea might be a little bit of, you know, overwhelming bureaucracy and just kind of like society and the individual. Maybe that's there. Maybe, I don't know. Um, Again, as you mentioned on the previous one, text placement on this is interesting. That seems like somebody forgot to hit send her. But yeah, that's uh, I don't like it. I think it has a reasonable home on this list. Not sure it's up in the top 14 of worst ones, but it's bad.
Yeah, it's not good. I know a guy who's super into Yes. So I've heard a fair amount of Yes through him. I myself have never really delved much into Yes other than Rick Wakeman, who was their keyboard player, also played in Black Sabbath for a little bit and was later replaced by his own son in Black Sabbath. So Black Sabbath has had a father and son among their ranks. His son was in the band much longer, and his son, bringing back Rick Wakeman, his son, after Black Sabbath ended, um, he after their farewell tour, his son Adam Wakeman started a band called Jazz Sabbath. And the concept behind Jazz Sabbath is that he plays a fictional character, and the storyline behind it is that he actually wrote all of Black Sabbath's songs. Then was something happened to him and he was in a coma, and Black Sabbath, including his father, stole all of his music and repurposed it as their own. Now that Black Sabbath has ended, he's out of his coma. He is trying to reclaim the Black Sabbath discography as his own, and made a little mini mockumentary about it that includes his father and a bunch of other different members of Black Sabbath in the studio and touring bands. And his father in the credits, in documentaries that'll have their name and like what they're known for. So, it'll show like, so and so played, bass in Black Sabbath from this year to this year. And for Rick Wakeman, it just says bitter old man under his name. So I like their keyboard player's son a lot. That's my that's my take on Yes.
And that's,
And
and
I'm sure this means something, this album cover. I don't know what it is
yeah,
though.
to someone, but
Yeah.
not us.
Give me silly storylines like Jazz Sabbath,
That's
and
pretty
I'm happy.
solid. That is
Yeah.
good.
And actually the Jazz Sabbath albums are really good.
Oh, good. Um, the www.thug.com, Trick Daddy. And yes, kids, like Mike and I have educated you in the past around, the libraries, hard copy Wikipedia, um, record stores, or hard copy Spotify. Um, when this whole web thing came along, the World Wide Web, this is what a browser looked like. This is a pretty accurate depiction of what a browser and what a website would look like when all this mess started. And um, appears to be Apple, if I were to guess on some of these things. Um, so, things date. I think technology has started to accelerate so much that they date. You're at your own peril if you're trying to if you incorporate any kind of a technology reference in artwork, song lyrics, whatever, you're at a big risk of dating yourself pretty quickly. And so this is only 1998. So, but God, that's still like 26 years ago. Um, but this is the baby browser. Um, the I'm not a big fan of the imagery entirely. I do like www.thug.com though quite a bit. I think that that's pretty cool. It's just I would have gone maybe just with just that with the cursor blinking after it or something. But
So, to Kelly's point, problem with doing pop culture or timely references in your music and on your album covers is they age really quickly. And I've found particularly with like some old school rap stuff, and I'm not calling this old school rap, but going back and listening to old rap records and things where there's a lot of cultural references in there. I don't know what half of it is anymore. And even if I did know, it's stuff I've forgotten about a long time ago. And that's the problem with this stuff. So I actually, if I remember correctly, at the time, I remember people praising this album because it was still kind of newish for bands to have websites at this time. The first music that you could get online was from a company called Pan. They were the first ones to sell music online in any way. So that was the first time you could get, other than like MIDI files, could get actual music files online. They were followed up really quickly by mp3.com, which was then bought by Universal. I only know this not because like I have a weird history of internet music. I was signed to both of those companies at different points. So that's how I know this. Um, but it wasn't until Prince, a few years before this, started selling his albums through his own website that it really kind of took off because he was fighting with his record company. So he started making albums and selling them directly to his fans. And at first, people really thought he was nuts and they were like, he's not going to sell anywhere near as many albums. But what they didn't realize at the time was he didn't need to, because that same $20 CD in the store that he made 50 cents off of, he now made, $15 off of selling it directly to his fans. So Prince became much more commercially successful in terms of dollar amounts and profit margins selling music directly, which is why he ended up being forced to change his name to a symbol, because his actual birth name was Prince, but that was owned by the record label. So he wasn't allowed to use his own real name because he was still signed to the record label, which led to all kinds of crazy lawsuits and actual laws and things about ownership of people's names now. So at the time, I remember people thinking a screenshot of his website is super smart because that's going to drive people to his website where he can sell merchandise and things like that directly to them the way that Prince does. But to Kelly's point, I mean, this would have been dated a year later at that point. This browser would have been out of date. This kind of, clip art background and stuff would have been out of date within a year of this coming out. And that's really the danger of doing something like this.
yeah, those were the days. All right. So David Allen Coe, Caribbean David Allen Coe. Not what one would expect. Um,
No,
I don't know who thought it was a good. He said, okay, we gotta cover this beach with conch shells. Just load it up. That's what
they're
we
like,
need to do.
when I think David Allen Coe,
Conch
I'm
shell,
thinking conch shells on the beach.
100%. Yeah. And then, obviously they must have blown their budget on conch shells because couldn't afford to buy some wood for an actual fire. So they they have this cheesy little animation thing there that can then sort of ties into the superhero David Allen. I don't know, it's just all over the place. Um, Ridiculously large belt buckle, another choice, uh, another shirtless cover, again. But it's the conch shells that really do it for me on this to make me dislike this cover. Because there's this one crazy conch there on the end. It's like on top of a rock. It's like, what are you doing there? It's crazy. But
Stupid conch shell.
stupid conch shell. You can fall. I'm worried about
You're
that
ruining
conch.
this David Allen Coe album cover.
How many conchs were killed for this cover? I want to know. Um, David Allen Conch Killer is what he is. Uh, so I've said my piece.
So David Allan Coe is somebody who also has a long history of terrible album covers. Um, this going back to what country artist were we talking about earlier on the list? I don't know. In the first half, I mentioned that all of these country artists from this era knew one
I think
guy
it's
who did all.
George Strait, maybe. I think
Can't remember
he
now.
was the Thomas the Tank Engine one. Yeah.
Correct. And I mentioned when we said that they all knew one guy who did all their logos. And it was the 3D letters you would draw on your desk in school with some terrible combination of colors. And I think it was like orange and yellow on his. This is the exact same thing, but with red and blue. And that's why I mentioned that every 70s country record had this style on it, and they all did. Everyone from this era. I don't know who started it, but obviously everybody else thought that looks great. Give me give me that because I've seen dozens of albums with this. Um, Unlike that, this isn't entirely drawn. The fire is, which is nonsensical. And I mean, it has a picture of David Allan Coe on the cover, so there's that. I
Yeah.
saw David Allan Coe live in
It'll be all right.
a smallish club, and he was really good. So
That's not a shock. That's not a shock at all. The, you have a conch shell with him?
yeah, there was no conch shells there that I remember.
Well, that's because they all died falling off rocks.
Yeah,
It's crazy. All right. There we go. Another train. It's been a while since we've had a train. Rooting for the train on this cover, big time. This is what I call a bad album cover. This is totally bad. Disco Train. I mean, it's bad. I mean, this is bad. 360 degrees of bad going on here. It's Disco Train. It's, uh, boy, I hope that train's running fast. uh, the macrame cape. And
those are words you don't hear a lot together.
no, not often, not often. Um, and by and
Where's
large,
my macrame cape?
it it sounds like a They Might Be Giants song. It's
Marie, did you take my macrame cape?
why are you hanging a plant? That's my cape, you know. So and obviously, gentlemen, Mike and I are big fans of Alice Cooper. Utilizes a top hat. It can be a look. It's a good look for Lincoln. It's a good look for Alice. It's a good look for, all the steampunk folks out there. This is a wussy looking top hat. This is this is the kind of top hat that belongs with a macrame cape. They probably came as a package. So yeah, I hate this cover. This is a horrible cover. It should be higher on the list.
Yeah, so I don't like Donny Osmond and I don't like this album cover. The concept itself isn't necessarily bad. The idea
Really?
of somebody playing piano with a speeding train coming up behind them, if it was somebody else done better, not in a macrame cape and the terrible top hat, and there's maybe something there, maybe, but it's not this. This is poorly done. And I'll be honest with you, no matter what the cover is, if I saw a Disco Train, there's no way I'm listening to this.
It's gonna be an uphill battle for me to like the cover on that. But I guess the other thing is I struggle with his intent here. Is he trying to push the piano across the tracks? Is he saying, I'm going to play a couple more notes and I'm going to jump away right before the train smashes the piano? Does he just not know? I just don't know. So I have so many questions that I'm not really interested in the answer, but it gives me questions. Like I said, I just wish the train was going faster. Capadonna, Black Tarzan. Apparently he got a little grumpy at people making fun of this cover. Um, I'm can't figure out why he was surprised. I can't I can't when you get that final proof, run across there and said, "Yeah, that's the cover." Oh, that's you nailed it. That's what I wanted exactly. Um, wow, there's just so much here. It's someone that has learned how to cut images out in Photoshop and drop them in, and they want to show that skill off. Um, if he's half tiger on the right side on the top, he's got to have a paw on that hand. It's just, it's just not, it's just not right. And then the other part is when you go to the four corners here, you go predator, 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 prey. I just don't. I don't know. This is very dissonant for me. I have lots of issues with it. The paw is the biggest thing. Is I don't know why his left hand is not a paw. Um, that's my biggest beef of many that I have with this cover. Square it away from me, Mike. Explain.
I love Wu-Tang Clan, and Capadonna is one of my favorite members of Wu-Tang Clan. So much so that when I got married, Capadonna recorded a video for us that became the save the date for our wedding. So Kelly got one of those cards, and if you scanned a QR code on it, you were treated to a video of Capadonna inviting you to the wedding and walking you through his divorces video. It was kind of amazing. And that was cut down. His original video that he gave me was like 6 minutes long. I I heavily cut that down. But again, huge Wu-Tang Clan fan, huge Capadonna fan. Honestly, can't publicly thank him enough for doing that for me. That said, I remember this coming out, and I remember Vex, our friend Vex from Starscream, texting me and just saying, "What happened to Capadonna's album? Like, why didn't he reach out to anybody? Why didn't he reach out to you? Why didn't he reach out to literally anybody who's had some Photoshop experience?" And I remember it got it. I mean, and maybe this is what he wanted. I don't know. But maybe he just wanted all the attention from it and knew that making like this crazy looking mess of an album cover was just going to get a ton of attention for his album. And it did. I mean, this was on every music website was talking about this. And he did defend it and say that this was exactly what he wanted, that this is exactly how he envisioned the album cover looking. So I don't know what maybe this is exactly what he wanted, but I have to believe, given the fact that Capadonna has some good album covers. um, and I've always especially liked his first solo album, The Pillage, which has this like kind of grainy, somewhat out of focus picture of him with a baseball bat that I always liked that album cover. So he made an album cover that I really like on one of his solo albums. So I have to believe that this was a choice. And he is also, so for anybody who's not super familiar with Wu-Tang Clan, he's usually the person who's looked at as being the one with kind of the visual taste in things. Like he's always the best dressed. He's always, you know what I mean? Like I I don't know what this is. So I have to believe that he was just like, I'm gonna make something that's so crazy looking. Every music website is gonna talk about it. And that happened. So I have to assume that this was a weird master plan on his part. Again, love Wu Tang Clan. Capadon is awesome. Thank you again for the wedding video.
Man, just make that left hand a paw. Maybe I'll give you a pass.
I like that that's her problem with it, though.
It's my biggest problem. It's not my only problem. but it's clear. Let's go back here again. Everybody look at that. How can you have lion up here and not lion down here? That's just, I don't know. It's a thing. So more issues with physics here on this one. Um, Bubbling over Dolly Parton. Good solid 1970s font work there. Double the dolly, double the fun. They got her in the front and the back. Um, I don't know if she had a twin that she beheaded and threw in the fountain by her pool. Um, if that's it's like don't mess with me or this is going to happen to you kind of thing. Um, but it's definitely got that kind of Polaroid colorization too. So bad colors, uh, head on a fountain. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's no missing lion paw, but it's still pretty bad.
Um, so I this is my Kelly and the Lion Paw for this one. So it bothers me that there's two instances of Dolly Parton on this. If they wanted to do this her appearing in the fountain thing, one, it's poorly done. Like Kelly said, it almost looks like it's a dismembered head that's being pushed up by the fountain. It's not meant to be. Like if you look at it closer, you can kind of tell it's meant to be like her body in the water, but it's just this is pre-Photoshop. So this is somebody literally, cutting a photo and doing a double exposure, and it looks it. That's how it was done. So it's not well done. But I have to be honest with you, it's the two Dolly Partons next to each other that really bothers me. They should have just taken that background shot of Dolly Parton and had the fountain popping up next to her, and you still get the title tie in to it if you're really trying to be that on the nose with it. And I would have liked it a lot better. I don't think it wouldn't be great, but I don't think it would have any place on a list like this.
Yeah, I think you could keep the body back there, but you got to lose the head. It's you got to take that head off that body back there because it's up front. Um, Unless again it's his twin sister that she had to take out, but um, yeah, it I don't know it. I think Kelly and his Kelly's Lion Paw. I think that'd be a good children's book. Uh, okay, all right. So I have no idea what's wrong with this one at all. First of all, this looks like kind of your operating room. This would be a Dr. Mike operating. It looks dingy and filthy and yeah, disease ridden. Um, uh, and so then there's some sort of chicken mutant that's giving birth to an album. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the write up, it talked about the fact that, oddly enough, some people were a little offended by this, and they had to put a big band aid over the the crowning of the. Who would have thought two crownings in this list? But
We've never mentioned crowning on this show
no, this is
before,
the
and now
first two
twice.
mentions. Yeah, hopefully we're done. Um, and and my lion's paw moment on this is, but this is consistent with like doctoring I'd see you do. Um, Everybody's behind the action. It's like there should be it's all pitchers and no catchers here, and so somebody should be around. The fielders are not in position. There's a problem here. Um, but I think it's between the feet and just the dinginess of the eye. It really weirds me out on like so many levels. And so it's a thing. Your thoughts, sir?
So, I mean, I'm no expert on Three Dog Night, but I've heard a few of their songs, and I don't see how this relates to the band. What I will say though is Lil Nas X to promote his album did this whole thing where he's wearing like prosthetic pregnancy stomachs because he was giving birth to his album in the weeks leading up to it,
Okay.
kind of thing. And I actually thought that was kind of clever. I mean, I didn't like it, but like I got what he was doing. Um, I didn't realize that he got that from somewhere. And I, if you had said Three Dog Night, it would have been even weirder to me. And this isn't how I would have imagined it looking either. I would have figured they would have did something like, those pictures of the mother after the baby's cleaned up and she's like holding the
Holding
baby
it.
that everybody does, not the sticky record being held in forceps. This
No.
is just a lot of weird choices that were made here. I mean, it's not good, but it's just one of those things where like I imagine somebody did a huge line of coke and was like, I got it. I got the album cover.
And then it'll be, oh yeah, that's great. We got this woman giving birth to our record, but she's
Yeah,
gonna have chicken feet. So, oh wow,
that's deep, man.
that's crazy. Um, yeah, definitely belongs in the top 10, in my opinion. That's just scarring. Kanye West, Life of Pablo. I'll tell you what, I'll put in as much time as he did on this album cover. I don't like it.
Yeah. There was a time when Kanye West like cared and made really good stuff. It was a long time ago. It was before 2016 because that's when Life of Pablo came out. Um, yeah, there he used to be great. He really, really did. And not only does he seem like a really shitty person, especially in recent years, but his music isn't even good. The visuals aren't good. Like there's nothing that you can grab onto to hold up your defense of your fandom of this person as an artist anymore. And to me, that really started with this. Like, it's really obvious to me that this wasn't an artistic statement like a lot of his fans tried to defend when it came out. Like, it's like, oh, he just slapped this together because he didn't care. And it turned out that that was kind of true because when this album was released, I don't know if it mentions it here, but when the album was released, it had unfinished mixes of some of the songs and the album ended up getting pulled and re-put back up a few times before the final version of the album was out because that's just how little anybody cared. And that's kind of the way he's approached his whole career since then, is just not caring and putting out garbage.
Like this cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's yeah. Okay, Aretha Franklin. So a little reminiscent of the Revolver cover, maybe. I think we got a little bit of that going on. Um, Not good things. Not a lot of good things going on here. Uh, Confusing. And albums Hey Now, Hey, Other Side of the Sky, The Other Side of the Sky. Again, many of these horrific covers at least have quasi interesting font use and titles and all that, with the exception that the bottom half of it's completely unreadable. But the Aretha on the top's nice. uh, and Yeah, not good. And then she's yeah, not good. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah. This is another one where it's very bad, and I also don't know what it's supposed to be. And again, maybe for an Aretha Franklin fan out there, if you know this album, maybe this makes sense in conjunction with the music. But just looking at it, I don't know what it was meant to be. So it's not only poorly executed, but I don't understand it on top of that.
I defy anyone. So this is a challenge to our listeners. Um, I defy anyone to give me the storyline behind this cover. Um, and if you convince me you got a good storyline, you can have one of Mike's video games. So well, let's do that. So, but um, yeah. So challenges out there. If someone could come up with a story that ends with this, um, have at it. Oh, we're at the top five, and boy, who'd have thunk Ted Nugent would be there. We mentioned the original cover for the Spinal Tap album "Smell the Glove," which seems to be fairly close to what this one ended up being, but this one kind of, you know, goes the extra mile on Love Grenade because, it's not enough to have her as a turkey and bound. You got to put a grenade in her mouth. Just seems like insult to injury to me. Um, and plus, grenades are typically called pineapples, not apples. So I just think that lack of attention to detail is troubling as well. Um, yeah. So obviously highly exploited and just just bad. The grenade, it was already this would already belong in the top five without their grenade, but you add their grenade in there and you just locked in. You are, I would have had this one actually higher on the list.
So I don't like this album cover. It's poorly done. Even just putting the concept aside, it's not well made. It's bad Photoshop work. Um, that said, I don't think this belongs on this list. Not because it's good, but this was never actually released this way. This was like a prototype for the album cover that got leaked out. This isn't the actual album cover that was released. This isn't a defense of Ted Nugent. Going back to what I said for Kanye West, there's artists who just seem like shitty people. Ted Nugent. Um, so I don't like Ted Nugent. Stranglehold is an amazing song, though. I'll say that. I always do throw that in as a caveat. Almost everything Ted Nugent says makes me want to punch him in the face. But Stranglehold is a great song. You can't take that away from him. So, so this isn't a defense of him. He seems like an idiot. But this wasn't actually released.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think
fair.
this leaked out on like an ad or something like that, but this wasn't the actual album cover. So I don't think it should be on this list just for that reason.
That's fair. That's good. I couldn't wrap my head around how you couldn't want this on the list, and but that is an acceptable explanation. The
Yeah,
only one.
it's not because there's anything good about it, but
It's like,
it's not the
yeah,
actual cover for Love Grenade.
yeah, yeah. She seems happy, It's just I don't okay. Okay. The Dada-esque uh Crosby, Stills, and Nash Wiener Roast on the Moon from Live It Up. Uh I think, and again, it's in kind of a bit of the cheeky write up they have for this one, but I think there's probably a hint of truth to it. That Crosby, Stills, and Nash was at one point in time Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and three three hot dogs remain, and one of the hot dog sticks is broken, which I think is maybe like a Neil Young thing. Kind of talk about a little wave to him going away. I had missed for the longest time that there are actually people climbing up the sticks that the wieners are in.
Oh, I really didn't see that until you just said it.
Uh, so that adds another dimension. So I think this is weird. Um, Nobody appears to have a grenade in their mouth, so I'm good there. There's there's no part paw, part hand situation going on, so I'm good there. Um, So, but just also the composition and the kind of layering and stuff. It's just so cheap looking. Just seems like minimal effort put into there. But I've got the little people climbing up the stuff that softens to where maybe this shouldn't have been on the list. It's a strange cover, but maybe it's not so horrible. Where do you stand? Since you seem to kind of want to forgive these some of these.
I mean, this is bad. I don't like Crosby, Stills, Nash or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young or whatever other combinations they've existed in. I don't like them, and I think in recent years they've shown the kind of what's the word I'm looking for, champagne socialism that they've really 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 pushed so hard. Like taking their stuff off of Spotify for their for having Joe Rogan on there, which would be great, except when they realized they lost a bunch of money, they immediately sold out their own values that they preached so hard about and put the music back on there. So I don't like them. I don't like them as people. I think they're full of shit. Um, I think this is a bad album cover. I don't know that this would make my worst list though. I think it's dumb. It's actually not the only album cover with hot dogs on it on this list, which is weird too, I guess. I'm not a big hot dog fan, so maybe that's what it was. But I didn't even notice the people on there until Kelly just said it. So
You're not talking about the Orleans hot dogs, are you?
no, no,
Okay. All right.
no.
Okay. Yeah, especially up at number four. So I'm not buying on that. All right.
Here we go.
There you go. I know you've been waiting for this one. You got many thoughts to share. There's a preview of Mike's Creed hate, it's just he's revving up. He's getting ready to go. Totally different artists are out there, and you had to be bringing up Creed. How bad their album covers were. Um, this is bad. Okay, this is bad.
I
Um,
don't know how many Creed albums there are, but they should all just be the top of the list. Like I don't know how they settled. I don't even think this is their worst one. As bad as this is, I don't think this is the worst looking Creed album cover.
Pretty bad. But yeah, I again, it's uh, the coloring kind of an issue. It's got almost a Quake color palette to it. I look at it a little bit more. It's like, so that makes me like it a little bit because it's got a Quake color palette, but palette can only take you so far. Um, I also believe that is entirely an inappropriate hammer to be using for such fine carving work on a tree. I think he's hunting a mosquito with a bazooka with that. I mean, if he was carving that in granite, maybe, but that's not tree carving hammer, my opinion. You know, reasonable people can disagree, but I think he's mismatched his tool set. Um, Again, mildly predictable, but several of these albums have done okay with the band name or the title of the album as the one saving grace in an otherwise train wreck. So I know you've been waiting, so let them have it.
I hate Creed as a band. They seem like shitty people. At least one of them really seems like a shitty person on top of it. They're a Christian rock band from the late 90s who espoused, I've said this before when we've talked about certain people like Bill Cosby, when that's come up. When people really, really want you to believe that they're good people doing the right things, they're the worst people. So, like when all the Bill Cosby stuff came out, I was not surprised at all because that's what people who are trying to hide stuff do. They point the finger at other people when they're doing things, and that's Creed. So their singer, has a long history of drugs and standoffs with police while on meth. and all kinds of stuff. But they would get on TV and preach their stuff and call other people evil and do all kinds of stuff when they're the shittiest people. But their real crime, in my opinion, is their artwork. That is really what they owe an apology for. I'm sure he's in because they're together again. I'm sure he's in some sort of recovery program. I know that making amends is a part of the 12-step program, and nobody's reached out to me yet for having to see Creed CDs on shelves and have these images burned into my eyes. We've joked before on some of the other albums that like maybe it's somebody's, friend or brother or kid or something like that. That is literally what these are. So the guitar player's brother who is learning Photoshop, um, when the band started, they let him make the album covers and he made all of their album covers. So and m- much like a band like say Kiss, and I'm not trying to knock Kiss, but like Kiss got to a certain point in their career and like stayed there. Like they didn't try to evolve past that because they found the thing that works for them and just kept doing it. And that makes sense. But somehow, as a graphic designer, he never made it past those early Photoshop stages. Like the Creed albums never got better, the cover of them. I don't even think this is the worst one, like I said. A more recent one is actually, in my opinion, their worst one. They did a compilation album, and somebody told me they actually pulled it and re-released it with a different cover because so many people were making fun of the cover. They did a compilation album because Creed has gotten a late second or third wind or whatever you want to call it now, from their music being played at sporting events. So a lot of people who weren't there for the meth fueled cop standoffs and all that fun stuff from the Preacher band, uh, who don't know that their fans actually sued them. There was a class action lawsuit of Creed fans who sued them because their performances were so bad live, which almost exclusively consisted of the band coming out on stage, being so out of it on drugs and alcohol that the singer would make it through one or two songs. The band would then try and play instrumental for another song or two, and then they would leave, stadium shows that he made hundreds of dollars to get into. Great guys. So I hate them. I hate everything they've ever done. And their album covers are actually the worst thing about them. So I don't understand how they're not, if they have 10 albums, those should be the top 10 albums. I don't even know how many Creed albums exist. I think I'm owed money from the class action lawsuit for having had to hear Creed on the radio for years. And we're certainly owed an apology for stuff like this. Not a fan.
Got it. Okay. Also another cover. I don't actually own this album. I do own McVicker by Roger Daltrey, which is uh actually a pretty decent album. Um but Bitter and Twisted is on uh McVicker, and the opening line. So and Roger didn't write many of these songs, but the Bitter and Twisted starts off with the lines: "The psychopath never takes a bath because he'd wash away his hate." And so
It's a good line.
it almost feels like Dr. Seuss has gone wrong on that, but this is before that. This, I think, was his first solo album, "Ride a Rock Horse." Um, yeah, I guess if you're gonna go shirtless, you're Roger Daltrey. I mean, I think I will say that as far as this, I think this would be how a centaur would look, by and large. So the back, I'm not really sure how the spine works on this creature because it appears to be almost like a switchblade on there, but again, strange. This is a strange cover. This is a little weird. Is it number two of the worst album covers ever? That uh seems off to me. I think that the reviewer has issues with Roger for some reason.
Yeah, I feel
Unnecessarily.
like
Go ahead.
I feel like this is if I made this list and made the top 10 all Creed albums, like I hate Creed. So I feel like this guy doesn't like Roger Daughtry or just the Who in general. I feel like that must be what the because I don't think this is a good album cover, but there's not anything technically wrong with it in the way that there was on most of the other albums on this list.
Yeah, because this at least I could see the story behind this one. None of the folks need to write in to give me a
Yeah.
story on that. He's a frickin' centaur. He's fired up. He's glad it's executed, appropriately in terms of photography or those things. The blending is not unreasonable. Um, then like the Lucky Charms one from a little bit earlier was not so not so great. So yeah, it was head scratch for me. I wouldn't have it on the list. It is quirky. I when I saw it, I am a big Who fan, and I was like, I wish he had a different cover because it's not the cover that I would have gone for. But if that's what he was shooting for, I think they nailed it.
Yeah, it's weird and I don't really like it, but I don't see how it belongs on this list.
Yep. All right, number one, Return of the Hot Dogs. Limp Biscuit presents chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water. Um, this belongs on the list, 100%, my opinion. Um, unpleasant on many levels. Um, I really don't think we need to delve into a ton about what the chocolate starfish represents, but it's present on the cover. Um, just unpleasant, you know. This group of individuals in this album cover are unpleasant to me. And if I were to sit back and go, okay, that just any photo of them or any drawing of them would be unpleasant. But it's like, how can we make it worse? It's like, oh, put them in a bed of hot dogs. Okay, you did it. Congratulations. It's worse. Um, so yeah, this I can support this being number one.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you here, Kelly.
All right.
So we're gonna start with it's not a Creed album. So
Yeah,
that's weird.
yeah.
It's not
Your
a Creed
hatred has
album.
blinded you.
So I don't like this. It's it's off-putting to look at, but that's the point, and that's why I don't think it belongs on this list at all. It's meant to be a bad album cover. That's what they were going for. It's meant to be a joke about how after their initial success, they were kind of punching bags of critics saying that, they hated everything about them from their artwork to the music to the way they presented themselves, that it's not real art, that it's just garbage that's slapped together. And this was their response to that. So I get what it's supposed to be. It's meant to be unpleasant to look at and make you feel uncomfortable looking at it. So I think because of that, it's not really bad in the traditional sense, like the same way that, taking out the 9/11 thing, the coup shouldn't be on there because they were mocking a specific thing of album covers. So I think when you're doing something that's meant to kind of be a parody or meant to look this way, whatever you want to call it, it shouldn't be on the list because of that, if that makes sense, because this is what it's supposed to look like.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you and say this was not the accidentally worst album covers. This is so just the fact that they had a goal and achieved it does not exempt them from being on the list in my mind. I guess if you're saying they're doing it ironically,
There you
Um,
go. That was the word I was looking
yeah,
for. They're doing it ironically.
yeah, yeah. That's the slippery. That's the liar's path to cover their tracks. I was being ironic. Um, but yeah, it's like if I ever catch any heat from my Betty White hate over the years, that's going to be my response. I was being ironic. So it's your get out of jail free card. Um, but uh, I'm shocked that you can't say it belongs on this list. I understand your deep and passionate hatred of Creed and their artwork, but we'll see on that. So maybe we'll do a show ranking the Creed albums, the artwork on those.
Can they
So
all be worst?
I think that'll be one vote there. Cool. Well, this was um, fun and educational. The first group we did on this, the decent amount of traction with the video. Had some folks watch it and enjoy it. So hopefully you've joined us again. Maybe made it through this lengthy list. We'll kind of keep looking around to do some of these. I think in the future we'll look for slightly shorter lists. It's a little, it's a lot. But it was fun. Thanks as always, Mike, for kind of bringing in tons of backstory and since since basically everybody on the list Mike has some relationship with one way or another. That was interesting. So so I've had a hot
my
dog, so
my
I guess that
my
makes it.
backstory is just I hate Creed.
Yeah,
They should be every
has become the big story now. So,
yeah. However many Creed albums there are should have been that number of places, starting at number one.
yep. Yeah, there goes. I don't think Creed's gonna be sponsoring the show. So all right.
Stadium anthems. I couldn't think of it. Creed has an album called Stadium Anthems because their songs are getting played at sporting events now. So it's a compilation of those. And the first version of the album cover was like clip art of a baseball stadium with them poorly photoshopped standing in front of it. That's their worst. That should have been number one. I don't know how it isn't. I don't know how they're not all on there.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up just so you folks know once we kind of stop recording. I got another hour and a half of hearing Mike hate Creed. So looking forward to that. Be sure to like and subscribe, check out our merchandise at the merch store, and don't forget to listen to Hard No, the world's shortest podcast, published daily, available for free. Best way to stay on top of that is to like and subscribe, hit that bell. I know we only went on for like about 12 hours going through the list, most of it spent with Mike explaining to everybody why he hates Creed. But we did forget we've got some additional content to make, which were covers that we felt should have been on the list that weren't. And so what you're being subjected to right now on the screen is my offering um, by Riot. Narita. Um, yeah, I think it speaks for itself. That is a seal head there. But you notice seal head, two matched hands. It's not like one seal flipper and a hand. It's right. It's kind of a seal sumo sumo wrestler who's been very successful with all the dead bodies around it. The exception it's about to get mowed down by a plane. Maybe a Messerschmitt, hard to tell. Um, and things are on fire and burning. So it's pretty horrible, I thought.
Pretty bad.
Okay. Mike, tell us about this one, sir.
So I chose New Cleopatra from Dead or Alive. So this album was released in the 90s. It was released in kind of like one territory at a time over the course of a couple of years. So by the time it was released in the US, I actually like the US cover of the album. Each territory got like a slightly altered cover and a slightly altered track listing. Um, and a big part of that is because the band was a one-hit wonder here in the US, but were much more successful in Europe. They're from the UK. They had a bunch of hits in Europe and are gigantic in Japan. So the album, like most of their stuff, would come out in Japan first, and they would promote it there first, and then it would kind of get released everywhere else, with the US usually being last because they only had one hit here. But I actually like the US cover of it. I absolutely hate this. This is the original cover that was released in Japan. And if you buy the album now, like I bought the anniversary edition vinyl, it unfortunately has this cover on there. Yeah, I don't like anything about this cover. That's the singer of the band, who unfortunately has passed away, so the band no longer exists. But yeah, just I don't like it. The US version's good. I really wish the vinyl had that on there.
Both of those covers should have been on this list. Should have taken Roger Daltrey's Ride a Rock Horse off.
Yeah, right behind every Creed album.
I thought we'd make it. We didn't. Thanks for watching again, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.